Queer history is often forgotten, erased, or conveniently left out of discourse. And so are the individuals who fought and braved an oppressive and discriminatory society to fight for the rights that we have today. So in the spirit of remembering, it is my honor and privilege to welcome to WQMD actor, activist, filmmaker, and true icon, Dr. Beverley Ditsie.
So happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you.
Oh my God.
Finally to have you on the show.
guys,
This is a big moment for us.
It's huge.
It's huge.
To be with my siblings.
Yeah.
Say it with me. We're queer,
my
dear.
Happiness.
Ah, bless,
Hi.
bless.
I haven't been called actor in a very long time. Like it's normally left out, because we like, the activist, the filmmaker, musician in there sometimes.
Okay,
right?
bless, you're right.
Actor. So cool to hear it.
But are you returning to acting anytime soon?
Well, I mean, that's I've kind of thought, why not?
I mean, it would be a shame. For
I
you
feel
not
like
to.
full circle. I love this full circle things that are going
you were
on.
the first
right?
child star way back in the day
Absolutely.
when television started.
When television, I think television was about 3 years old in the country at the time.
Wow.
79, and 1980, That's when I was cast as a non-binary child on South African television during apartheid. I loved it.
That's awesome.
I loved it. It was,
would have been a dream for me.
I've
And
never
now-
been more me.
And now we're in a space where you can get cast whichever
Way, exactly.
you
Look, we
identify.
didn't even have the words for it, right? All I knew was that I was neither or. I was none of it. And because I knew I didn't identify as a girl, the only other way to identify was boy. But because there wasn't anything else. But the privilege here is that I was allowed to be me.
And I mean,
Now, so at that time, did you know what you were doing? Because I feel like this might have been the start of what this icon was being created, who is Dr.
No,
Bev.
to be honest with you, I was just being me.
Okay.
And I think there's just a force of personality. There are children with a force. Where you're it doesn't matter what you try to say to this kid or what they would try to force me into dresses and skirts. But it became very clear very quickly that I wasn't that child. Also, I was so boisterous. I would rip dresses. I would rip things. Okay. So it just became very clear that put that kid in corduroy pants and let them go play.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Bless.
so I read somewhere that you had a big coming out party when you were 16. But when did you come out to your family?
I came out at around 13, I think. And there was a lot of confusion because although, people don't understand the difference between gender identity, expression, and sexual orientation,
Until
right?
this day, there's a very big
People just
confusion.
assume that when you say I'm identifying as non-binary and you are 11, that means something that has to do with sexual orientation. It doesn't. I knew that I was neither girl nor boy, but at the same time, my folks already understood that I was more boy, and so they would then refer to me as a boy, and it was accepted. I was we were, to a very large degree, one of my most favoriteest moments was when my grandmother, church ladies came over and, already they knew that there were no twins because at one point people thought that there were twins. There was a girl and then there was a boy.
Wow.
Because at home I was allowed to be a boy, but, in public church family gatherings, I was forced into a dress or a skirt. But this day, the church ladies are all there, and my grandmother says, that chair's broken, my boy will fix it. And the ladies are like, but there is no boy because I grew up in a maternal home. There is no boy. And my grand went, there's my boy. I have never felt so affirmed. I was so happy. That she even said that. I've never fixed a chair better in my life. It was the most awesomely fixed chair. Yes. And so I was already affirmed in terms of my gender identity and my expression. But then sexual orientation is a whole other thing. I was still expected to come out of being a tomboy to being cishet. And all of a sudden, I am not. And so the confusion grew because now not only is it gender, but it's also the sexual orientation that's becoming an issue. And so when I came across the words gay, was the happiest day of my life too, because then I knew, I got it. I was like, penny drop. So that means this is who I am. I'm like all the other people, you know?
I want to find out something with you as well. So you're having this moment, you're 13 years old, we're not in the 2000s right now. You're 13 years old, you're coming out to your family. What does that moment look like?
This is the 80s, right?
Okay.
Like the early 80s.
Still a very suppressed
82,
kind of
83. And so already there were all kinds of ideas. I think maybe that's also the thing, language. I like to talk about language. If we don't have a positive vocabulary to identify ourselves, if we don't claim our own words for ourselves, words that affirm us, we end up subscribing to and going along with all these negative stereotypes that we are, titled with and words. So my folks really, as far as they're concerned and as far as the rest of society is concerned, the minute you use words like gay, lesbian, LGBTI, you are anti-God, you are anti-tradition, you are anti-normative, you are anti-everything that's supposed to be. And so I was literally told that's bullshit. Can I say that? I was told that you can't, you're supposed to be normal. I was taken to sangomas and therapists like everybody else. I think a lot of us kind of went through that experience.
And it's still
right?
relevant today. People still
Absolutely.
get sent to conversion therapy because to think there's something wrong with you.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, I think that there's something wrong into forcing people into heteronormativity and heterosexism because we are not all the same. We cannot all be the same. Anyway, just to answer your question, after coming out, my best friend who lives across the road, Bule, also then comes out and says, I think me too.
Oh, wow.
And what was really amazing is that Bule's sister had these friends in high school who were very flamboyant, beautiful gay boys, who then came over to meet Bule because the sister said, I know some people who might be like you. And Bule ran across the road to come call me, and I came over and found Tidi, who was tall, who had Adam's apple this big, deep voice, but beautiful, makeup beautiful, with like flowing robes, who then said, hey. Oh my God, I died. I died. I was like, this is the most beautiful, ethereal being I have ever met in my whole life. And that's how I then got a community. And that community grew from there. So I was about 13, 14. So when I turned 16, this huge extended family of queer siblings were in my yard at home. And it was the biggest party. And the reason it's called a coming out party, I think, is because I don't think anyone had ever seen a gathering of just queers in a yard in the middle of Soweto, partying up. And everyone passing kept saying, is those girls? Is that boys? What's going on? I loved every second of it.
I can just imagine that was such a prolific moment.
It was freedom. That was the first time for me where I was like, oh, this is what it is to feel this way, to feel so affirmed. Of course, my grandma had to shut it down by sunset because we were all so free. The boys were kissing the boys and the girls were kissing the girls, and it was getting dark. And my grandma's like, whoa, 60-year-olds, go home now.
I can just imagine what a prolific moment that had to be. But I want to fast forward a little bit to 1990. To another prolific moment where you and Simon Nkoli arranged the first Pride on Home Swell. Still in a time where it was very much oppressed. Like you said, people didn't understand, people didn't accept us. What was that moment or that process like for you to take up that space and being like, we're here and we're going to be doing this?
It was Simon in the leadership. There were a whole host of other folk, just so that we are not erasing the amount of important people that were there in that time as well. Being a founding member of GLOW, I think GLOW, maybe were about 20, 30 people that made up the founding of GLOW, but the committee that ended up, creating
forward,
the Pride March. And really, we were inspired by Simon. Simon had already been traveling the world. Simon kind of had a lot of queer history. And when he started telling us about Stonewall and what was going on in New York at the time when when the riots happened, Pride is protest. Pride was a riot. Pride was people taking up the space and saying, we are enough of police harassment, we're enough of public harassment, and we actually have nothing to be ashamed of. Absolutely. We are being shamed for our existence, and we are in hiding, which means we're being blackmailed, we're being harassed in every way, because people are afraid now that they're going to be discovered, and it's time for that to stop. And so that was very inspiring, knowing what was going on in Stonewall and how Stonewall happened. And so, by the time 1990 happened, you must also remember that in the country at the time, we were like, freedom was in the air for absolutely everyone, because this is, apartheid was coming to an end. But worldwide also, there was like a whole change that was going on. I think Tiananmen Square, I think, was 89. I think the Berlin Wall fell around 89, I think. So we were already it was a whole
in that
wave of transition. So it just made absolute sense that we would be visible, that we would kind of say, we are also part of this freedom.
But it wasn't an easy journey. You guys did get death threats in those type of things.
We got threats.
Okay.
But I think that, that for me, being 18, 19, that just went right past my head. Like the courage of conviction, when people talk about that, there was just always been something that has pushed me to believe that there's absolutely nothing wrong with anything that I am doing, that, within my siblings. Like there was absolutely, I just had this conviction that we are meant to be here and that we should not be shamed or harassed for being here, But so yes, we got harassed.
I want to understand that, because that's very profound. You had this understanding at the age of 18. We're speaking about it, you in the 80s, it's the 1990s right now. Where did that stem from? Because you had no references. Today, everyone have references. We have a show called We're Queer, My Dear. There are many other platforms that people are discussing the topics. Where did you find that?
I want to piggyback off that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And also, this is a time of Black liberation as well. How do you know that if, I should push this? This is what I also need to fight for. At a time where, people are fighting
only one kind of aspect.
Big struggle,
Yeah.
Where did you get?
It's not that it's a difficult question, it's just it's an involved answer. And it's involved only because as a kid, I was aware of how I was being put into a box that I knew for sure I didn't fit in. And so I already knew that there was a fight. I also knew, just to answer you, I was affirmed. Having my folks kind of say, you are cool the way you are. It was, look, I've always been, I was a favorite at home, which is unfortunate for my sister, who I've done my best to protect, but I was a favorite. What that meant is that I could do no wrong. And so I was affirmed. And being affirmed in that way and being told, also I had great grandmothers who would say to me that people like you have always existed. So they affirmed me also by telling me that we are being told that we don't exist or we should not exist, that this is, the colonizer brought this. But in actual fact, my great-grand's aunt, who was alive until her 90s, would constantly say to me, oh yeah, even my grandmother, and they lived up until they're 100. Which means when she talks about her grandmother, she's talking about somebody who was alive in the 1700s at the time. Are you understanding what I mean?
I'm
talking generational here.
Yes.
Would say to me, oh no, people like you have always existed. And we've always known that, in South America and in other tribes and traditions, you hear of third gender and fourth gender and,
Two spirits.
Two spirit, exactly. And this is how my great-grand's aunt would explain that stuff to me and say that, a lot of the time, people like you were more spiritually inclined. People like you sometimes would be isolated to go train to be spiritual healers or guides or whatever, because people like you have always been there, but you strike a balance between the genders and you always have. She said that. So that was some of the affirmation, So when I say I always known that we're meant to be here, is because I understood already that I'm being forced into something that I am not. And I always fought to just be me, but I wasn't allowed to be me. And then in high school, the political activity is happening. I now join SRC. I'm part of that movement. And even in these meetings, the cishet men are saying things like, yeah, men are going to go back to being men and women are going to go back to being women because we're going to reclaim our masculinity. That means that you cannot exist like you are. You have to go back to being And so that already made me aware that I don't belong here as well. And so when GLOW happened and when the queer movement happened, that became home because GLOW was an anti-racist, anti-sexist, was all-embracing organization and fighting against all the isms and all the injustices. That's where I found home.
I just want to add on to you, especially now you're saying the men back in the day were like, boys should be boys, girls should be girls. We still have that today. And for me, it is utterly unacceptable because we live in an era now where people are finding their own individuality. People are finding who they want to be. And for me now, for someone to come and tell me or tell people around me to be like, oh, you have to be a girl because you have the organs of a female, or you have to be a man, and it's not about not understanding it anymore. It's now comes from a place of arrogance and ignorance. Yeah. And that patriarchy that's always been there, and it's still there, and it's slowly like surfacing constantly, and it's like a little battle that we continue to fight. And my thing is always just like, let people be who they want to be.
The pushback is amazing. I think it's pushback, and it's a pushback that even the people who propagate it don't understand. Yes. They don't get it. They don't understand that there's a system in place that's there to oppress you. There's a system in place that's there to keep you in these binaries. And it keeps you there so that it can control you. And you break. We are the real revolutionaries here in that we can actually fuck the system.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
We are totally obliterating systems. And as long as we understand the relationship between the patriarchy and its evil twin, capitalism, and the other twin, the racism, like as long as we understand that this is where the power lies and that's how they're controlling us and the whole world, we're able to break from that and create a different future, a different way of being that is not within the confines of this control.
But sorry,
go ahead.
I want to bring to light, and also in conclusion, in terms of what you've just put on this table right now, is the fact that the starting point is the family. Yes. It's the acceptance. It's the fact that at home you felt that was where the affirmation came from, that catapulted you into a ripple effect, joining GLOW, and now starting this movement that changes this country forever. And now we have pride. And now you are in this space, and this is where we are right now. Where to from there? What happens in this after the threats come in, after you are still saying, that goes over my head? Where are we going to now with this movement that's called Pride in South Africa today, that you are part of the starting point? What does that look like?
I just want to add on to that, because as you mentioned, Pride comes from a place of protest. Do you still think that the prides that we have today carry those same values?
It's unfortunate, that we are where we are, and for me, the divergent happened. Race is at the center of it, privilege is at the center of it, and I don't think we can run away from that. Look, we knew that visibility and being out in the open would shift people's perspectives and ideas about who we are. I think I personally, all of us are constantly coming across people who say, I don't understand. And so by our very existence, we are educating. But then sometimes we have to use words to educate. And we knew that a constitution was being drafted. We knew that it did not make sense for us to not fight or try to be included in the Bill of Rights. And Simon Nkoli, having been a political activist, already knew and understood that he was sitting with some of the leaders, people who are now leaders, people, some of whom are no longer leaders, but you know what I mean. But he was sitting with those people, and he was able to also convince them that, you know, of our humanity and the fact that we deserve to be in the Bill of Rights. And so that was the goal. The goal was a visibility campaign that would change people's attitudes towards us, but also to legislatively make sure that we are protected.
And the word protected came in strong to be there as well. Now,
yes. And so that was really the main point. And I think after 96, after the adoption of the Constitution, where we are then mentioned, where sexual orientation is mentioned in the Bill of Rights, I think it's not just the queer movement. I think the rest of the country kind of went, because now we're free, right?
Yes.
And now what's the new vision now? That is where the rub lies, is that once we got the freedom, there was no new vision, no big goal to look towards. We were, all of us, across race, across gender, across culture, we were all looking at one thing, and then we've got it. And now what? So there was no big vision after that to build towards. I mean, you know, politically in the country, there was like the whole RDP, and this is how we're going to try and change this, that, or the other. But for the rest of us, for me personally, I knew, okay, I don't have much of a career except for being an activist. I'm a child actor. I'm a wannabe musician. I knew that I had to go back to my loves. So slowly I started going back into TV as a director and kind of going behind the scenes and all of that, right? But at the same time, you looked at the country and I started feeling like a gap was happening. Yes. There was like a whole vacuum that was left, because even when Glow folded after the mid-90s, it was because we lacked a bigger vision. We didn't know where we were going. And so when Pride was taken over by different corporates and different people, they took over from a place of not knowing the roots and not even sometimes caring about where we come from.
And I think that's the big thing. I think we've talked about this off camera. The whole sense of pride for me has gone missing. It's become like you say, a very big corporate-driven event.
It's a party that has very little
to do with why it was actually started.
Exactly.
I wanna move towards the end of this episode, and I wanna ask you, Tina, you have a question?
I do. Before every episode, I speak to my girlfriend. I tell her who we're gonna have on WQMD, and I always ask her, like, what would you ask? You know, so and so. And I said, what's the one question you want to ask Bev? And she said, what is the role of love in your revolutionary politics? And then I was like,
Snaps.
I mean,
Snaps.
So if you wouldn't mind.
Well,
What is the role of love in your revolution?
Love is at the center of every revolution. That's the core of a revolution, isn't it? The love of self, the love of your people. I'm a big follower of, you know, Biko consciousness, which obviously all the other revolutionaries kind of, you know, step in there. When Che Guevara said, you know, I'm a romantic, you know, when all the other revolutionaries say the same thing. You're a romantic. There's a lot of love and romance in wanting to fight and put your body on the line for yourself and for your people. Love is at the center. And because I'm also somebody, I'm deeply spiritual, religion is a construct that I do not subscribe to, but I'm still a follower of the Christ, whose every single message that has ever come from the Christ is about love. You know, love is at the center of everything I do. I used to do a lot coming from a place of anger. And you could see it in my rah-rah, whenever I took podiums and whenever I did interviews, I'd come from a place of deep-seated anger. You know, anger at the injustice, anger at how we're treated, especially as the feminine. The feminine is being denigrated, and we know what that means, you know, that, you know, the masculinity is being threatened. I got that. And so I would always be coming from a place of anger. But anger burns us. Anger burns you who holds it more than it does. Like people don't care. They don't give a fuck. And here I am walking around burning and dying and getting acid reflux, and, and getting migraines, and all because you're walking around in a ball of anger. I got to a place where I knew I had to put that down and go back to where this began in the first place, which is a place of love. Love replenishes. Love, you grow with love. Love restores. And so now I come from a place of love for my people. I don't even care about them anymore. I think that's why, when we're workshopping the Beverley Ditsie Foundation, which we established last year and just registered, we are about us, about positive images of us, about fighting, yes, against all the negativity that's going on in the media, but really we want to make stories for us about us. We want to encourage us to show each other and ourselves, because when we reflect back, when we reflect each other from a place of love, then we heal.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so great question, and thank you for the question, because yes, everything I do is now coming from a place of love for me and love for us.
You are such an inspirational individual, and I'm just going to say it as it is. Like, I don't think we'd be sitting here having these conversations if it weren't for your bravery back in the day that has led us to this point. And the last question that I want to ask you is, having gone through all of that during the oppression and into the new age, if you can put it that way, what is your wish for the queer community in South Africa for the future?
I just want us to see ourselves. I really do. I think we right now, a lot of our hurt and anger and pain and angst, our mental health issues, our substance abuse issues, there's a lot of abuse amongst us, there's a lot of discrimination amongst us, violence within our relationship, all stems from a place of self-hate, because we've been told so many times that we should not exist, that we do not belong. I would like us to see ourselves as like we're meant to be here. I really believe that we are the balance that the world needs. Right now, I believe that toxic masculinity is killing not just people, but the world, the earth. We're drilling, we're bombing, all for the sake of some machismo that comes out of nowhere. It's all bullshit. We are here to balance. We are the balance. Spirit is no gender. God is not a gender. I believe I'm here to preach that message, that God is not a gender. God is not a race. God is a spirit. And we are that spirit. We embody that spirit that is neither gender nor race, none of the constructs. I just wish we could see that. I wish we could see our beauty. Because once we see our beauty, then we stop hurting each other so much. Then we stop hurting ourselves.
That is such a deep answer, but thank you. Like, it's everything that you said is it's true. And again, it comes down to love. It comes down to love. We at WQMD are so grateful to have had you on the show today. And may you continue to inspire. May you continue in the work that you do to create a better future for queer individuals in South Africa. And yeah, to just be that message and that beacon of hope. So today, I want to award you with the first ever WQMD Queer Icon Award for Dr. Beverley Ditsie for 2022.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Speech. Wait, my dear. Oh man, thank you. I appreciate. It's taken a long time for me to accept awards and acknowledgement.
But it is so well
But
deserved.
I appreciate. I receive. I receive the love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important to constantly remember how far we've come and to look back on the strides that we've made and to honor the people that have got us this far. And just to end off with a quote by Jamil F. Khan, "Memory is not self-sustaining. It does not dictate its lifespan. Remembering is a choice we must make daily."